Hi, I'm Oakley and welcome to episode 25 of the Link Building Show. I'm here with Miles and today we're going to be talking through the average day of a link builder. So Miles, can you run me through what a typical day looks like for you?
Well, get into the office for about 7:30. Like to catch up on the news that might have happened overnight or starting to develop in the morning using like TweetDeck or BBC News, listening to radio, whatever.
Yeah.
Then try to see if there's any reactive potentials from the news and see if anything can relate to the clients that we have or that I have. Try work my day around from there. How do you usually start the day?
Yeah, so very similar to yours. Start by checking any links that I've got in the morning, and then having a catch up on, say, like the news from yesterday evening and this morning, and then seeing again if there's any potential reactive opportunities. And then during the morning, I like to sort of start researching for a campaign idea. Then typically we have a morning meeting about quarter to 10. So that usually lasts about 15 minutes and everybody just discusses what their plans for the day are. And we usually do like a bit of a icebreaker question just to sort of get everybody in a good mood for the day. After the meeting, we typically continue doing research, and then if you have chance, starting on the press release before lunch. We usually take lunch about 1 o'clock, half an hour, and then continue with the press release after that in the afternoon. And then if you've got a chance at the end of the day, starting on mailing lists and beginning with distribution. So how much time do you spend on each part of the press release typically?
Well, of course, we start with data once you've come up with the idea. So trying to find the data, collect it, combine it all into an Excel document that is easy to read and understand. That depends, of course, on the data, how big the data set is, as well as what you need to get from how many different sources. Usually takes about a morning, maybe only a couple hours. Yeah. Sometimes even a day or two, because
yeah, if it's a big data
if it's
set,
a massive data set, you need to spend time on it. And then after that, you start writing up the press release, just summing up the key points of the data. Press releases don't usually take too long, depends on how complex, how much detail you want to go into for the data you've gathered. So if it's simple-ish data like Google Trends or search volume, usually only take an hour for a press release, but if it's a massive one with different factors, making an index for different states in America, for example, that might take you an afternoon, good 2-3 hours. Yeah. Just trying to figure out what you want to pick up on for each state, what states to talk about. Yeah. So Oakley, do you like plan your day in advance, or do you just adapt as you go?
So I like to plan my day in advance. I don't tend to plan too far like into the week. I usually tend to take each day as it comes, but then at the start of the day I'll plan what I'm going to be doing at each point during the day, because sometimes I find that you can spend way too long doing one thing if you don't allocate a certain amount of time to doing each thing. So yeah. Also, if I find that I'm reaching a little bit of a mental block with something, I might start on another or start researching for another campaign and then come back to it maybe like an hour later and just have like a fresh perspective on it. That sometimes helps. What about you, Miles?
I typically like to start my day writing up my clients, what I aim to try and do for that day for each one. So for some it might be making a mailing list, for others it might be starting a new idea, trying to allocate some time, like a rough estimate of how long it would take for each client, and work around that. Some things might take a bit longer than others, so I'll push one thing to the next day, or I try to give enough breathing room to be able to like move work without putting too much time pressure on myself.
Nice.
So when would you say is the most productive time of the day?
I'd say those first 3 hours in the morning for me, from like 7:30 to about 10:30, is like the most productive time for me. I think just like when you're first waking up, I find that that's when I'm like the most creative and most productive with my work.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
I would say kind of the opposite is like the last hour or two after lunch, just before the end of the day, just throughout the morning, still kind of waking up a little bit. In the afternoon, pretty wide awake by then. Sometimes just news has come about, it's like, okay, there's a reactive, I'll get on it now.
Yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you, Miles, for joining me, and we'll see you in the next episode.